All right, Shalom. It's the brother Barzal from GMS Atlanta. I want to start out by giving all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. And Shalom to the Akim out there pushing the word in sincerity and in truth. And I just got another one. I'm going to title it, Stop Coveting the Top Spot. The Most High will exalt you in due season. And you have individuals that's, very eager and hungry for notoriety or position. They want to be infamous. They want to have be that beacon of light within, certain camps. And it's like, just take your time into this thing, man. You'll have certain men that's very, very, hungry just for a position, whether being a captain or just in the ranking system. And that's not what this thing is about. Take your time in this thing, man. Learn the basics. Understand who you are as an Israelite. Understand the breakdowns. Understand the wisdom. Understand the basic principles. Genesis. Go to the beginning. You shouldn't be in a camp for a number of years, and you haven't even read Genesis, man. You haven't even read Exodus or Matthew. Any of these scriptures. You got to take your time in this thing, man, because you got jakes that just want to, just try to jump up and get a position of notoriety and just, be at the chief seat, so to speak. But they don't even understand the basics, man. So I'm going to jump straight into it, and I'm going to start with the definition of fundamentals, because that's what it's about, getting the fundamentals or the basic principles. And that's where you establish upon and you build upon that. All right. This is the definition of fundamentals: forming a necessary base or core of central importance. And this is the most important, rule of life, so to speak. Getting the fundamentals or the foundation. That's the core and that's the base. And everything is established upon that base. If not, then that'll be very hollow. On the outside, it would seem very structured, but when the floods of temptations and hardships beat on that spirit, it's going to be broken apart. So you got to have the fundamentals. You have to understand about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Read about them. You have to understand about Yahweh Shai. You have to read these books. You have to read about Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. You have to understand these basic principles. You have, in order to teach the law and teach Jake where they're going off, you have to understand the law. You have to read through Exodus and Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and it takes time, of course. You're not going to consume, all these, books, so to speak, in a day or in a week or in a month. But you have to gradually take your time, step by step. You got certain men that jump off the porch, so to speak, and they just shooting forward. Like, just take your time. Don't be too fast in this truth, and you can't be too slow. Because if you're too slow, that's where that sluggishness goes in, man. But if you're too fast and you're too hasty, that's how you trip up and fall. And you land in a situation that's actually going to be worse if you would have took your time and took it step by step. You got to remember, this is a race of endurance. Whenever you're doing something that's endurance-based, you take your time. You make sure you have your breathing routine. You make sure that you have a good, flow. You making sure that you have your head mapped out, so to speak, your head on a swivel, so to speak, and you building upon that. You're running along those basic principles and methods. So it says, forming a necessary base or core of central importance, basic, underlying, core, foundational. All right, rudimentary, elemental, elementary, basal, and root. So these are very important synonyms that falls along the lines of fundamentals. Because another major point is elementary. You start with the basic elements and the basic scriptures, and you build upon that. And that's the roots. That's where you establish yourself. It tells you that in the book of Colossians, being root and established in this truth. And I'm going to get the etymology of the word fundamental. Fundamental go to the word fundere, which means to found. All right, because everything starts from a foundation, and it's built, it's structured, and it's built upon that main core. All right, and if it's not established on that core, then it's gonna be crushed, man. It has to have the main frame, so to speak, and it's established upon that. All right, and I just got an image, because I'm going really, this is really something for younger brothers, or even older brothers too, that's very, very hasty, for a position and notoriety and things like that. But it's like you always got to go back to the basics. If you skipped over a lot of these things, you got to jump back and start all over again. That's why the scriptures say that, if any man think if he knoweth anything, he knoweth nothing as he ought to know. And it's always good to go back to the basics. It's always good to jump into the milk, because that milk, that's what it is. That's the root. That's the elements that you should be founded upon. And the more and more you keep those roots healthy and strong and durable, that's the longer duration you last in this thing, man. So I just got it from preschool to elementary, because that word school, which I have right here. Matter of fact, I'm going to this definition also. School, I'm going to jump straight to the etymology. From skol, skole, leisure, philosophy, place where lectures are given. So that's the wisdom. So when you're dealing with the wisdom and the lectures of the spirit and the philosophy, which it's a compound word, philo and Sophie or Sophia, which is the love of wisdom. So when you're dealing with that wisdom, it starts with leisure, and it starting with the basis of wisdom, the basic principles of wisdom, and you establish yourself and build yourself upon that block, so to speak. Yahweh being the chief cornerstone, of course. So going back to this chart, it has elementary school. So it's starting with the elements. When you deal with elementary, the root word of elementary is elements. Excuse me. Before that, you have preschool. When you first establishing yourself into this thing, man, that's the basic stages, preschool and elementary. Which, like I said, elementary goes back into founding yourself upon the basic elements, the basic principles and rules, and you establish yourself upward. And as you grow in this truth, that's when you get promoted. You don't want to come in this truth and you trying to jump straight to high school and you trying to learn, college lessons, so to speak. You're trying to be on a college level. You start with the basics. It's better for you at the end of the day. All right. Before you learn calculus and you learn all these advanced trigonometry and all these different advanced types of math, so to speak, and these advanced sciences and all these different advanced things, you have to start with the basics. Start with addition. 1 + 1, 2. Okay, you got that. 1 + 2, 3. Okay, you got that. All right, then you start with your subtractions, and then you build off of multiplication. You build off of division, so on and so forth, until you become on a college level. So elementary, middle school, that's when of course it takes years with this truth, hours upon hours of dedication and understanding these scriptures. High school, college, and post-grad. And that word college means higher learning, which college is even in the scriptures. So when you're dealing with college, you have to start from the basics, all right, until you actually are exalted or elevated to the point where you're on that college degree level, where you're a learned man and you're dealing with the higher principles of learning. But if you don't understand certain things, you got to start with the basics. Because everything, even when you read a lot of things in the New Testament, when you read through Hebrews, you have to really understand a lot about the law to understand what Paul is talking about with Hebrews. Certain things in Romans, you have to go back to the Old Testament. Certain things in the New Testament, you have to link up with the Apocrypha. You have to learn these basic instructions. That's why it tells you that to whom shall he teach wisdom? Them that are weaned from the breast, for precept shall be upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. And it also the Lord also told Ezekiel to eat this whole roll, which the whole roll is the scripture. Matthew 18:4. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself, which that word humble goes back to humiliate, or even further it goes back to so-called basically human, which I'm gonna get it, and that word the reason why it's termed human in its roots is because it's earth. Whenever you humble yourself, you actually establish on the earth. You understand what level plane that you're actually built upon, and you build upwards from the bottom up. All right. Yeah, humilis or humus, that's where you get the word human from. Going back to the Hebrew word Adama, which is ground. Adam was built from the ground up, and then the Most High installed in him the spirit. So it's the same thing in this truth. You start from the ground up. You got to remember, it says also in Galatians about that schoolmaster. You learn about the basic principles and the basics of this truth until the Most High takes you that step further to understand, more and more advanced things. You don't want to start from an advanced level because you could bug yourself out. And you have certain brothers that, the scriptures say in John 6:63, the spirit quickeneth, the flesh profit a little. The words I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life, so to speak. You have certain brothers that learn on an advanced level, but, it's always good to start with the basic. That's the main thing. Forget being good. That's the importance. That's what you have to do. You have to start with the basics, understand these scriptures. And then you build upon that frame. Just like when you build in the house, you don't start with the sheetrock. You don't start with the roof. You start with the foundations, and you build from the foundations upwards, so to speak. You establish the frame of the house, and then you build. Then you start going into when you basically in the advanced side, so to speak. You start to install the other basics, so to speak. Certain other things that when you put in the windows and all these different things, and then you put in the sheetrock and you paint and you do all these different things to make sure the house looks a certain way. But it all starts with the frame. It starts with the skeleton, so to speak. Hey, even that's how the human body is built upon. You have your circulatory system, your skeletal system, which your skeletal is the frame. That's your main frame, so to speak. And then you have your muscular system. You have your central nervous system. What I said, the cardiovascular. And it starts with that skeletal system. That's the frame, and you build upon that frame. And that's why the scriptures speak about that milk, because the milk, that's what builds your bones. That's what makes your bones dense and very, very strong and durable. All right. So this is Matthew 18:4. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. So as a child, another thing as a child, you know what you're supposed to eat and what you're not supposed to eat. Certain things children can consume on a large quantity, but it's certain things as a toddler and as a babe that children aren't supposed to be fed, because it could choke them up. It could destroy their immune system. It could destroy their nervous system. So you give the child, starting off with the basics, milk. And as the child gradually develops, they teeth start to come in. They eventually gradually grow up. Then they can start with the more dense foods. But even before that, you got to give them Gerber, so to speak. Just as an illustration, mashed up food and different things like that, because they can't even consume the solid. They don't even have enough stomach acid to break down those solid pieces. So they have to start with the ground up, pears, so to speak, and the ground up apples, so to speak. And then eventually, when their teeth, solidify in their mouths, they lose their baby teeth, and they basically establish upon that main frame, and they have the teeth, so to speak, and their body is built up. Then they can start consuming, more heavier meals. And it still takes time, you know, for certain things children are supposed to eat. So that's why it says to humble yourself as a child. All right, 1 Peter 5:6, humble yourself. Remember that word humble goes back into humiliate and being low. You know, lower yourself to the standard where you're supposed to be and let the Most High build you up. So humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hand of the Most High, that he may exalt you in due time. Because as you grow and you build up, the Most High is going to exalt you. It works with everything. If you are into basketball, you know, you have to learn the basics of basketball. You have to understand how to shoot. You got to understand your form. You got to get your form. You got to understand how to dribble. You got to understand the techniques. And as you grow up as from a basic baller, so to speak, to a more professional level, that's the exalting. And it takes time. It takes a lot of practice and training. And it takes the basics. You know, if you are under anybody, whether it's boxing, basketball, hell, bowling, you know, whatever sport or whatever, you know, thing that's established that has basic skills and principles, they'll tell you to start with the basics and live upon those basics. Establish yourself upon those basics before you know, get to step 3 or step 4. Start with step 1. Understand step 1, and then you start to get to step 2. Learn about step 2. Observe, meditate on step 2. Then you go to step 3. You shouldn't be trying to go from 1 to 7. You don't know nothing about 2. You don't know nothing about 3, 4, 5, or 6. And you're going to need those steps. Those steps are there as guidelines or guide steps because they're going to build us up in its time. Those are the principles. All right, because you're going to be in certain scenarios and situations that you're going to need these different things, these basic understandings, you know. That's why it says the Most High will exalt you in this time. All right, 1 Timothy 3:6. Not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil. And you got a lot of guys that's novices, man. And they get lifted up with pride. They understand how to link up certain scriptures. They understand certain things in the Greek and the Hebrew. And now they think they're just master teachers. Nah, this thing takes time, man. And you always build upon that which you learn. The apostles and elders laid down the footsteps. They already got the foot in the stove. Walk upon those tracks. Because they've been doing this 20 plus years. They understand this thing without a shadow of a doubt. They understand how the Spirit of the Most High works. And as you grow in the understanding, just stay as an apprentice under that master, so to speak, the apostles and elders. All right. In order to be an elder and a master or a leader, you have to be a good follower. And it may take a time where you follow or you under the mentorship for years, if not decades. And look at Paul. Paul even is still spoken about in the scriptures of who his teacher was, Gamaliel, Elisha, and Elijah, the disciples in Yahushua. You always had certain men that followed great men to become great men. Scripture says, he that's among the wise shall be wise. So you have to stay in the midst of the wisdom and learn the wisdom and build upon those principles, because the principles, that's the importance, the fundamentals, the basics. All right. So you won't be lifted up with pride, and the Most High will exalt you and lift you up. All right. Because if you lift yourself up, that's when the devil comes in. But if you humble yourself, that's when the Most High's mighty hand will lift you up in this time. And this is Sirach. Let me get the chapter 11. And I'll start at 11. Sirach 11:11. There is one that laboreth and taketh pains and maketh haste, and is so much the more behind. Again, there is another that is slow and hath need of help, wanting ability and full of poverty. Yet the eye of the Lord looketh upon him for good, and set him up from his low estate. And it all starts from being on the low estate, from being humble. So you shouldn't try to move too fast, because that's basically the story of the turtle in the hare, so to speak. The rabbit that was running fast, and he knew he was very swift. He was getting proud, you know, relaxing and doing certain things, drinking before, drinking drinks and different things like that before he makes it to the finish line, because he knew that he could have reached the finish line before the turtle. And he was, fucking around so much, being proud, that the turtle actually made it to the finish line before him. So you have to keep your eyes on the prize, and you got to stay humble, stay lowly. Learn these things. Learn about the book of Sirach. Learn about the scriptures. Really understand these different scriptures in the Hebrew and the Greek. Study upon the apostles and elders and constantly, learn this thing, man. You shouldn't be trying to, come up against certain men, especially if you're a man, period. You shouldn't be doing that, period. But as a man that's starting off, you got to start with the basics, man. Another thing too, as a man that's coming in, the scriptures say, "Get thee betimes and wear out the saints the steps of certain men door." You should be a man that's really into the scriptures and asking questions to learn more, to understand. Okay, who was Solomon? Who was Yahushua? How do these things correlate? What is the meaning of this scripture? What is the meaning of that scripture? All right. And I'm going to end it with this scripture. Sirach. Let me see. Bear with me. All right, Sirach 20 and 27. A wise man shall promote himself to honor with his words, and he that hath understanding will please great men. So as a wise man, you wait, and build yourself up until you get promoted. Just like a king, before a king sits on that throne, he has to be pre-grown. He has to understand the fundamentals. He has to understand policy. He has to understand economics. He has to understand all these different things before he actually can touch that throne, before he actually receives the anointing, so to speak, and has that crown upon his head. So us in this truth, through our words and through our wisdom, that's where we'll get exalted in this time, in due season. So it says, a wise man shall promote himself to honor with his words, because your words and the things that you actually speak shows you what level you on. You have certain men that start off on a basic level, so they start with the basics. And you got certain men that are advanced, and they go into more advanced things, and the Most High exalts those men in his time. Look at Solomon. Solomon, throughout all the wisdom and the words that he spoke, his very illustrious parables, so to speak, and his wise sentences and his proverbial sayings, that's what exalted him to the point where the Queen of Sheba and all these different people came to hear Solomon's wisdom. It says, and he that have understanding will please great men. So if you have a great understanding, then you will be able to please those great men. But if you have little understanding, then you could make those certain men displease. So what you have to do is what? With all thy getting, get understanding. Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. And upon that, that's when the Most High will take you, to the next level, so to speak. All right, so I want to end it by giving all praises to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahushua, double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone. Shalom.